everybody, and welcome back to the Star Wars Expanded Universe, narrated by Disney or Lucasfilm, whichever way you slice it, Legends. And today, we reread a novel that I have gone through before, but it's been like a year or almost 2 years now. So it was basically like a fresh read, except for some things that I remembered. In fact, most of the things I remember from this series don't come from this first novel. However, before we get to the X-Wing novel, I have a few other things to discuss. First being, I have nothing really to add to this, but one of the short stories you would read around here, if you wanted it, was Deader Than a Triton Moon by Jason Fry. Now, I'm going to be honest, it's been like a week or two, because this is back when I had COVID, when I read this. If I remember correctly, this is the one involving bugs, so Denning approved, and it was fine. It was not a horrible story, which is, again, I feel 85% of the short stories in the expanding universe are just okay. You have some that are legitimately bad, some that are legitimately excellent, and then you have the majority, which are just okay. And this falls under that category. So if you want it, it'd be around here. In Star Wars Tales, the comic series, issue number 22, there is a story in there called Marooned. And in this story, we learn about a stormtrooper that was left on Endor. It's okay. He is a dude. He does some stuff in the comic, and he ends with staying on a downed AT-AT, I think, if I'm remembering correctly, and he goes and lives on it, I guess. I kind of forget the ending already, because it's kind of forgettable, but it was a decent little thing, but it's nothing great. We then also have Star Wars Tales, number 5, Lando's Commandos. This one was pretty cool. And it's Lando, baby, so of course you have to love it. But I didn't really care for the art, though. But that being said, Lando is commissioned by the New Republic to go do a mission, so he gets a commando squad together, and they do some fun stuff. It's a short comic, but it's fun. Then we have the Charlene Newcomb duology, I guess, here. We have A Glimmer of Hope and Whispers in the Dark from Adventure Journal number 2, both of which are by Charlene Newcomb and involve Alex Winger. I have nothing really to say about these two stories. They are okay stories about this character named Alex Winger. She will eventually become a Jedi, from my understanding. I don't know. They're not horrible, but nothing really happens in them either. That's why I have nothing really to tell you about these short stories. Nothing really happens. There's a lot of talking to characters, but none of the characters is particularly interesting. Nothing they're talking about is particularly interesting. It'd be like going to a restaurant and hearing, the table next to you talk about work last week. It's just like basic, normal, everyday discussion. It's nothing particularly intriguing. And Alex Fink herself seems very bland. She's not particularly interesting as of yet. Maybe my opinion will change of her as we go down. But as of right now, those two stories, it didn't do it for me. I read them. They were fine. They weren't offensively bad. They weren't offensively good. They just exist. And that is most of adventure journals and insiders and all that stuff. That's most of the Star Wars stuff that I've noticed. I'm going to read it all because I love the expanded universe and I care about reading everything within that canon because I really have no interest in the Disney canon, as I've said numerous times. But I just find most of the short stories in the expanded universe to be kind of the novels, usually 85 to 90% of the time, excellent, right? And then you have those little duds here and there. But these short stories are just, take it or leave it. There are some that I think are absolutely exceptional and you absolutely should read, as it will enhance it will enhance your Star Wars experience, but that's not most of them. So, um, but anyway, moving forward, in Adventure Journal number 4, we have It's a Gambler's Life by Anthony Russo. And again, it involves a gambler. It's, a different perspective from the Jedi and all that good stuff, in this particular era. But again, it's nothing particularly noteworthy either. But chronologically, it'd be about here. Now for a good one. In Star Wars, we have 2 good ones coming up for you. In Star Wars Insider 126, we have Buyer's Market by Timothy Zahn. So this story is about Lando Calrissian, baby, and it's actually really good. I actually do recommend this short story. Is it essential in your understanding of the EU universe? Absolutely not. But it is a fun little story. It is something that didn't need to be explained, but it gets explained here. We get to see kind of how Lando starts to head toward that mining thing that he's doing in the Thrawn trilogy. So you start to see that transition in this short story. It's pretty good. Then, before the titular novel to talk about today is Missed Chance by Stackpole, by Micheal Stackpole, which is just a little story involving Corran Horn before he joins Rogue Squadron. Again, you don't need it, but it's a fun little tale before the events of the novel that will be placed right around here. And then we get to the reread of the century, X-Wing Rogue Squadron by Micheal Stackpole. Still really enjoyed it. It was not my favorite of this series, I know that's for sure. Not even my favorite of the Micheal Stackpole books, but it's the first book in a 4-part series. I'm not counting the other ones because it was written by Alston. But I guess the first thing to address is Corran Horn, because he's the titular main character of this particular book. And Corran Horn's kind of bland. I know, I don't hate him. I don't love him. I think the only time I've really been negative toward Corran, because I liked him in New Jedi Order and every other subsequent appearance, the only time I really disliked him was in I, Jedi, because he was the smartest person ever. He was better than Luke. He knew this, he knew that. Micheal Stackpole can write better than Kevin J. Anderson for the Jedi Academy trilogy. All that stuff pissed me off. But other than that, Corran's a fine character. He just, in this particular book at least, I think, if I remember correctly, I warmed up to him more as the books went on. But in this first book, he's kind of bland. That being said, he's fine. I like Corran. I just don't love Corran at this point. But he's from Corsac, and now he's joining Rogue Squadron. So there's a bunch of that upbringing that kind of affects his relationships with other characters, and that's what this book does best. I mean, a lot of people like action scenes. Even I mean, I can tell that's written well with Stackpole and Alston when it comes to action scenes, but I don't care about it. So the one thing that is driving me through these books is the character interaction, and there's a lot of good character interaction here between certain characters like Wedge. This is the book that if you want to fall in love with Wedge, this is it. Nobody loves Wedge because of his couple appearances in the movies. They love Wedge because of these books. And if you haven't read Rogue Squadron, like Lance, Star Wars EU Team, and you just went straight into, New Jedi Order, sure, you might still like Corran and Wedge because, you've seen them elsewhere, like in the Thrawn trilogy and stuff, but it was these books that truly made Wedge his own, and you even have Stackpole and Alston come back in the New Jedi Order series with more Wedge scenes, or sacrilege, I know, to all those haters, but there's some really good Wedge moments too in Legacy of the Force. But all that came from these books. Wedge would not be this fan favorite character if not for X-Wing Rogue Squadron by Micheal Stackpole. Micheal Stackpole did that, and he needs credit for that. Also, How about this? How about an underrated character that does not get talked about enough but absolutely should? Admiral Akbar, who I fell in love with personally because of these books. I love Akbar. I think Akbar is a phenomenal character. He's probably my favorite underrated character in the Star Wars Expanded Universe. Akbar, Fishboy, for the win. We also have other characters like Gavin Darklighter in here, the cousin of Biggs Darklighter. There are other Rogue Squadron members who won't make it in this book, one thing this book does not do that I think Alston does better. I mean, I haven't reread all of the Stackpole X-Wing books yet, but so far, none of the deaths that happen in this book really affected me. I know there's one, and I know Matt knows about this. One in particular in X-Wing Iron Fist that gets to you, but that did not happen in these books. It seems like Stackpole really prioritizes certain characters, and then the other characters kind of get shafted, which is understandable, but still, we also learn early on that Tycho did escape captivity, which kind of happened off screen, and trust between Tycho and the New Republic, military is low, but he's able to go under a bunch of restrictions if it means he still gets to help Wedge. A lot of this book deals too with the political aspects of post Return of the Jedi, which I really like. One of the reasons people dislike the prequels is because politics is boring and blah blah blah. I want to see guys fighting lightsabers. Politics sucks. Get it out of here. And yet, the further you get into post Return of the Jedi, the more political it becomes. Thrawn Trilogy has many political scenes. X-Wing has a lot of political discussions. You have other series in the Bantam era that are a little political, like the Black Fleet Crisis. New Jedi Order, extremely political. Even Legacy of the Force. Fate of the Jedi would be too, but it's a retread and it kind of pissed me off and bored me. So I don't really care about Fate of the Jedi. And then the Legacy comics are not very political, but it's fine. It's a comic book series. I don't need it to be. But for most of the novels moving forward, they can be pretty political, which is exactly what was boring about the prequels, except that it's good, and everybody who complained about it is stupid. Anyway, there's a lot of missions that are done in this book because the main goal that's trying to be had right now is they have this New Republic and there's the Empire, but we need to take Coruscant. That's the next step. We need to reclaim Coruscant because in the prequels, again, the prequels didn't come out when the book came out, but with full context of the entire expanded universe, the prequels, we had the height, we had the Republic, or it wasn't the height, it was the decline for sure, but we had the Republic at Coruscant, the center of everything, versus the Confederacy, versus the Separatists. And now, in this time period, the Empire is still fully in control of the core, especially Coruscant, the home planet, where Palpatine ruled. But now Palpatine and Vader are dead. And so, they don't actually get to Coruscant in this book, but that is the steps they're trying to take. By the end of this book, they get to a place called Borealis and take it over, all part of the evil plan of characters. But they make it there, which means that the next book's goal is probably going to be to take back Coruscant, which I think is correct. But speaking of which, to bring into this next aspect, we have Agent Lore as the main villain of this story, and he's rather bland. He is rather boring. I don't care about Agent Lore at all. I don't think he's a very interesting villain. But it's okay because there's a villain behind him who's much more important, much more intimidating, much more threatening, and actually interesting. So I can forgive it. That person, and imagine this. This is, when did this book come out? Because I actually have the physical book right here for you, even though it's backwards, okay? This book came out 1996. Yasan Izard, also dubbed Iceheart by many of her foes. She is the main villain of these 4 books by Micheal Stackpole. a woman. And she actually is effective and threatening and intelligent. Is she Thrawn? No. But she's the next best thing, and arguably the best villain we have until New Jedi Order, outside of Thrawn. It'd probably be Thrawn, her, Thrackan, and everything else is, yeah, whatever. But, she's really cool. We don't get too much with her in this book because we mainly focus on Agent Lore, who I find rather boring. That being said, she's still there. She's pulling the strings behind the scenes. By the end of this book, we have a huge victory for our heroes. But is it really? Because that's exactly what Izard wants. She wants them to go to Coruscant, and seems like, but why? Well, the next couple books will answer that question, but I can't answer it here because it's not discussed here. But we know that it's all going according to plan, exactly how she wants it. But yeah, she's really cool. I like her design. I like her attitude. It's a good villain foil for the heroes, even though they haven't actually met her yet. Another thing this book deals well with is loss. Again, while the people dying did not necessarily affect me in my heart, it does affect the characters around, the characters you do care about. And so it works in that aspect. We know that Wedge has already faced so many losses, and that weighs heavily upon him. You know, it kind of feels like a World War II veteran talking about all the people he lost. You know, Wedge has lost a lot. I mean, look at Biggs, look at Porky, look at all the people he's lost in the comics. You know, Wedge has been through stuff. He survived all 3 films. And he still has to watch friends die in this book, which is another fascinating thing because the book even goes out of its way to say that Wedge really didn't try to get to know people until they had survived at least 5 missions. Because what's the point of getting to know them before that when they may very well just die? And he doesn't want to burden himself with caring about people that would be gone in the blink of an eye. So he takes a while to warm up to you. And I just think that's really interesting. Again, this makes you love Wedge. And the relationship that he has with Admiral Akbar, and Admiral Akbar's integrity and his honor, and just everything about Akbar is wonderful in this book. And I loved it, and I can't wait to see more of him moving forward. But also just want to mention, Corran is Rogue 9. I do believe Rogue 9 shows up in the Thrawn trilogy, but that came out first. So there's no name you could attach to it. But if you see Rogue 9 in the Thrawn trilogy, just know that's Corran. We get Myrax in here. Now, we first saw her, if we're reading chronologically, in the X-Wing comics. But I really like Myrax. I think she's a really interesting female character. Again, this is 1996. Oh, but female characters existing and being good characters, that never happened before 2022. We're only progressive now. Ugh. Well, Myrax is a great character. I really enjoy Myrax. And yes, sure, there's a romantic thing going on with Corran, but so what? Does it diminish a female character just because she can fall in love? Does it diminish a male character when he falls in love? God forbid people be human. You know, I don't think it's an issue. I don't think it's sexist for her to fall in love. And they're not even in love by the end of this book. Sure, if you know the expanded universe, you know that they do eventually end up together. But their chemistry works. I think so. It's one of my favorite relationships, from memory at least, in the expanded universe. You know, that are non-film character relationships. I really enjoy them. I mean, again, I haven't seen most of those scenes that I'm thinking about, but what I saw of her in here, they still have great chemistry. Even if I read none of the other books, I would say they have good chemistry, and I like their interactions together. And so, her as a character on her own, great, and her interactions with Corran are also phenomenal. Also, I just want to mention that this book outright says sex, like not as in like gender or anything, as in the act. Like, I'm not going to talk about the context, go read the book. It's not like a big deal or anything. But, you'll never see Denning actually using the word sex, at least from memory, in any of the Star Wars books. But Micheal Stackpole just threw it out there, which just kind of surprised me when I read it. And the nuance of General Som. General Som is kind of this foil to our characters. He is part of the New Republic, but he is very antagonistic toward Tycho because he doesn't trust Tycho, because Tycho was stuck with the Empire for a long time. Things might be, mind controlled or something. But Som is genuinely like a good dude. He just has different perspectives on things from our heroes. Therefore, we kind of dislike him. But he's not a bad dude by any means. And so I just really like that about General Som. Um, there is a section here where stormtroopers invade their base. And that was a really intense scene, and I really enjoyed that. There's the big final battle on Borealis, as I mentioned before. I don't have too much to say there, other than it was it went exactly as sorry, as Izard wanted it to go. And so we'll see the fruitions of that moving forward. I don't have too many spoilers for you. I really enjoy the character interactions, at least for the ones that Micheal Stackpole actually cares about, because it's clear that if a character is going to die, he barely gives any depth to them. But this is a solid introduction to the X-Wing Rogue Squadron series. Is it the best in the X-Wing Rogue Squadron series? Absolutely not. But it's a good starter point for if you want to get into the EU. I mean, again, I would always say I recommend. Start with Truce of Bakora, make your way through the novels. You'll be perfectly fine moving forward from there. But this is another excellent starting point to begin with. Though it does mention Bakora and stuff in here, so I mean, I would read that first. But yeah, an excellent start to an excellent series. I can finally start loving Star Wars again because it's pretty much all highs moving forward, except for a few duds. But I'm looking forward to rereading some of these good books because it's been a while, so I actually don't remember exactly how things go down. But if you love Wedge, or if you are curious about Wedge, you want to learn more, if you're curious about dogfights like World War II with Rogue Squadron, this is the book for you. Till next time, guys, I'll see you with Wedge's Gamble, the second book in the X-Wing Rogue Squadron series. Until then, guys, may the Force be with you.